Good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Tracy Searle. I'm the General Manager of the Public Works Department. And welcome to our meeting tonight. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide you with an update with respect to the Jester House renovation. In addition to that, we're going to provide you with an update with respect to Jester Park. As many of you may know, our last public meeting with respect to the park was back in January of 2020. Since that time, we've completed survey work and we've updated our conceptual plan to include some of the feedback we received from that meeting. So we want to put the plan back in front of you again this evening. So before we get started, I'd like to introduce our panel. We have with us today Paul Freese. He's the head of our Fleet and Facilities Division. Marco Boyce is the Planner 3 in our Parks Division. Shannon Giordano manages our communications for the department, and Kendall Summers is the head of our Parks Division. A few housekeeping notes also before we get started, and this is up on the screen. First, this presentation is being recorded and will be available for viewing online at the website link listed above. One thing I want to ask is first, if you could let the presenters get through the presentations before asking questions. We will allow time at the end of the presentation for questions and answers. In addition to that, rather than putting questions in the chat, we ask that you use the Q&A function for this meeting. That allows us to organize our responses in a better fashion. If for any reason we don't get to all the questions, and it is our goal to do so, the Q&A function also allows us to respond to your questions after the meeting. So with that said, we're going to go ahead and get started, and Paul's going to be providing the update with respect to the Jester House renovation.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for those joining us via Zoom, and thanks to Mr. Arhart for being the one brave soul to join us here tonight at the meeting. As Tracy mentioned, my name is Paul Freese, Fleet and Facilities Division Manager. Also with our team this evening is Steve Rubel, who's a project manager for the house project, house renovation. So before we jump into the park design and construction, we wanted to just quickly share an update with everyone on the exterior envelope project. And if I can change the slide. Go that way instead. Okay, thank you. I just want to start by saying, first of all, that we're extremely proud of being able to preserve the most of the house and maintain its footprint and design. Hopefully everyone can see these two images here. If you haven't had a chance to really get up and drive by and see the house, I encourage you to do so, to really appreciate the work that's been done up there. It really takes a quick visit to really understand all the work that's taking place. A few things that are taking place right now. We're finishing the electrical work, working with Delmarva for the installation of the utility pole and transformer before making the final connection into the house. The installation, waiting for the windows and doors to be delivered, and then we're going to regrade and reseed the site. There was some damage or some ruts created by the heavy equipment that was up there to finish the siding and the stucco on the side. So we're going to repair those, restore those to nice flat surfaces up there. So once we're finished with the house, what's next? For anyone not familiar with the Jester Arts Space, they were awarded a curatorship and is planning to convert the home into a space for art lessons, workshops, and exhibitions, and other art-centric type social events. I believe Alan Basin is Alan online with us today? Okay, he's with us today. Right.
Yeah.
Alan Basin is the president of the Jester Arts Space, and I included his website here. So if you have any questions, I'm sure he'd be happy to field those questions, talk more about what their plan is and what their long-term vision is for the space going forward. Once the electrical connections are made to the house or complete, the Jester Arts Space, at that time, they're free to move into the space and begin the interior outfit and renovation. including the entire HVAC system. So at this point, I think we're going to jump into the next agenda item, which is the park design and construction.
Quickly, before Marco Boyd updates you on the park, I just wanted to recognize a couple of your local legislators that are participating as attendees this evening. Your Councilwoman Dee Durham and your State Representative Sean Matthews are both joining us today. Thank you. Marco, go ahead.
Thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Paul. My name is Marco Boyce. I'm the planner with the Parks Department. I'm going to run through some slides here to talk about some updates for the park. So I just want to start off with some quick facts about the parcel for those especially who are joining us for the first time or don't know all the details that have gone into this property over the years. It's a county-owned and managed piece of land, about 32 acres of pasture and woodland. It's been assembled over the years, and it started in the 1970s from the Jester family. And over the ensuing decades, the High Point Dairy, the High Point Farms, which are located up near Ramsey Road, they had their cows grazing in the pasture here. You can see the pasture complex here, and the pasture areas over here towards Grove Road. And then also the parcel sits on a unique feature. It sits on the headwater of 3 local watersheds, the Rocky Run, Naaman's Creek, Shellpot Creek, which ultimately drain into the Delaware River or the Brandywine Creek. So from an ecological perspective, this parcel is quite important. And then, as Paul mentioned, the Jester House located here is being converted into the Jester Arts Space. And also to situate you, there's Barlow Road is over here, Hanby Elementary is over on this side. Jester Lane has a street stub in here into the park, and it fronts on Grove Road. So as Tracy mentioned, we did have a first public meeting January 16th where we presented a concept plan. And then since that time, we've gathered all the comments and feedback from that meeting. And we've made some initial inquiries to the Department of Land Use to talk about plan review and are currently developing the final design and construction plans. And since that meeting, we did a field run, topographic and boundary survey. That wasn't done previously, so we went ahead and did that work. We also got a wetlands delineation to verify the existence or non-existence of that regulated ecological resource. And then also we worked with the University of Delaware Center for Historic Architecture and Design to document the farm complex. We know the house is historic. We know the details around the house, but we didn't know what the farm complex really entailed. So we had our friends at the University of Delaware look into that. And when they did look into it, you can see a diagram here that they drew up, and they looked at it from a variety of different perspectives. They concluded that the farm complex was constructed after World War II. So it's not really a contributing feature to the historic nature of the house itself, which is a mid-19th century era house. And so as part of the park plan, we're going to submit an application to the Department of Land Use to demolish the complex there. And you can see the picture here that shows some of the current state of some of the buildings here at the farm complex. And even though we're a public agency, we do have to get agency approvals, just like a private developer. So we've been working some of that with DelDOT, talking about the access to the site, the parking, the road access at Grove Road, and then also the other access points on Barlow, Jester, and Hanby. And then we're planning to submit a construction plan, demolition plan, and recorded site plan to the Department of Land Use in due time. Additionally, since the first public meeting, High Point Dairy's lease ended after several decades on site, and they relocated their livestock to their main farm over on Ramsey Road area. And we also placed a temporary fence around the farm complex to keep folks safe and separated from the deteriorating complex. And then the Jester House, as you know, is already under construction. And Parks Maintenance has been mowing the site and monitoring the site as needed. So here's the original concept design from January 2020. Some of the feedback that we got, and you can see really quick like it's going. The Jester House is right here, and then the new entrance to the Jester Arts center, Arts Center here is located here. And then there was a figure 8 pathway loop around with pathway entrances to Barlow and Jester Lane, as well as two access points on Grub Road up here, and showing meadows, existing woods, meadows here, and maintaining existing woods, and then the farm buildings, farm complex to be removed in the center here. So some of the feedback that we received were the pathways are too close to the property lines. Where are the pathways in relation, or where the park is in relation to the properties? Because at that time we didn't have a boundary survey. And can the park improve the wildlife habitat for wildlife in the area? Drainage was always a concern in this area. Traffic is always a concern. And a few folks did say that this is probably the quietest and least impactful potential use for the site. So we took that into account, and we worked with our consultants to come up with this new design. It's obviously very similar to the old design, but we did tweak it in certain areas. It's still 20 acres of meadow and lawn, 12 acres of woodland, and about a mile, 8-foot wide asphalt pathways. All the access points are now controlled by bollards, so vehicles, unauthorized vehicles, cannot enter the site. Here at Jester Lane as well, and then up at Grove Road. And then the parking lot to the Arts Center I don't know if you've noticed, if you've been out there, we put boulders around the edge to keep cars from entering the site in that way. The asphalt pathway where it does interface with the meadow areas, which are in the lighter green here, will have a 10-foot wide lawn edge. And then along this property line here, where the meadow interfaces with these residential properties, we'll have about a 30-foot wide swath of a low meadow. We didn't want to do a lawn swath here because that'll look like a pathway. We don't want folks walking there. We want them to walk closer into the site along here. And then of course the farm complex itself will be removed. And this also shows where the wetlands were located. There's a farm pond here, and these woods are all regulated wetlands. And we're avoiding them at this time. Additionally, with the concerns over drainage, we've added rain gardens at the front where Grub Road. A lot of the runoff from Grub Road does run off into the farm and travels in this direction towards the farmhouse. So these rain gardens up here will help intercept that flow and convey it more slowly into the landscape, so it doesn't all rush off of Grub Road. And then we're providing a lot of additional landscaping where we could, where the pathway tends to be a little closer to residential properties. We're adding more landscaping here, buffer landscaping, heavy screening, deciduous plants and coniferous plants as well. And in general, the pathway is about 130 to 150 feet from most property lines. So you have quite a long distance between the rear property line and the edge of the pathway. And as we mentioned, the 3 different watersheds kind of bisect the site this way. Namens Creek to the northeast, Shell Pot to the southeast, and Rocky Run north to the west. And it remains still a passive park with pathways that encircle the meadows and open space areas. That was always the intent of this type of park. It's more like a neighborhood park in that regard. Here's some kind of detailed views. It may be difficult to see this. All this will be placed on the website. So if you have a particular concern with an area, we can certainly talk about that. But it shows basically in general, the Grub Road, here's on the western side of Grub Road, the entrance, the old farm lane that came down that side. We'll have a bollard here and some ornamental fencing across the front. Same thing with the other side, on the eastern side of Grub Road. That entrance will also have this type of treatment with a removable bollard here. Jester Lane towards the rear, the pathway interspaces the roadway, but it'll be protected by bollards. So when a vehicle comes here, maybe parks or doesn't park, and turns around, we'll know that this is just an entrance for bicycles and pedestrians. Regarding drainage issues, there's definitely some. This is in front of the Jester house. And here's the property corner of a private property. There was some flooding in the past here. Here's the old farm lane that is now going to be a pathway. And we're going to put a triple barrel pipe system underneath to convey that water around the property and then through the site and this direction, so it doesn't impact private property. And then here's the interface at Barlow Road, pathway interface. There, unlike Jester, there's 2 sidewalks at Barlow Road, so we do have to make that connection for ADA reasons, Americans with Disabilities Act. So we have to make this connection here through, and then we have a pathway connection here and asphalt pathway with a bollard and a sign to provide that vehicular protection to allow bikes and pedestrians to flow through. And then at Handy Elementary, we're connecting to their existing pathway system and then conveying the drainage underneath the pathway and into their soil system just the same as it is. It's just now we'll have a connection there that's official, so the folks at Handy can enjoy the park as well. Here's kind of what we envision things to look like. Simple 8-foot wide asphalt pathway with 10-foot wide lawn swaths on both sides, meadow, tree plantings, very simple, easy to maintain. And this is more of a high meadow here. This would be a low meadow. We do envision perhaps, because they are very large meadow spaces, that there may be some periodic mowed swaths cut through so folks can engage with the meadow and walk amongst the plants as it changes throughout the seasons. And some of the amenities, this is generally what a rain garden looks like. It's kind of a low depressed area with a mulch bottom and some different kind of soils at the bottom to help filter the water as it comes off. And then you have some native landscape plantings that are put in that helps hold the water and filters it through the ground. If in the event there's a high amount of water, then it can gradually absorb that. And then we have ideas for some kiosks. We want to highlight the fact that this is at the top of 3 watersheds. There will be some benches placed throughout. And here's some ideas of some of the heavy wooden bollards. These aren't going to be the skinny little ones. These are probably 12-inch by 12-inch by 3 feet tall. So there'll be very substantial barriers to vehicular traffic. So some of the next steps, based upon this meeting and any feedback we get, we hope to finalize the plans and make an official submission to land use sometime in November, which given the age of the farm complex and the request for demolition, we may have to go to the Historic Review Board for a public hearing in the winter. Hopefully that results in a land use approval in the winter or spring of 2022. So several, 6 months from now. And plan for construction while we're waiting for this approval, things like order materials, do construction phasing, work on ideas for construction access, construction limitations, and then hopefully go to construction sometime in the spring of 2022. With that, I'll open up for questions. We do have one member of the public here, so if he has a question, he may ask it.
That's a lot of information. Is that most of that going to be in your presentation going to be on your website?
Yes, sir.
So we can look at it. Can you describe the buffer plantings that you plan between the walkway that's parallel to
Sure.
Jester or Justin Lane?
Sure. Let me get
You're
back
going
to
to be
that.
about 100 to 130 feet from Justin Lane. I understand why you want to have the pathways out as far as possible because you allow really more walking room. Most of the neighbors probably would want the pathways right in the middle of the meadow, so there has to be some kind of a compromise, I would say.
Sure. Originally, I mean, even before that original concept plan, the pathway was even closer. We're probably talking 40 or 50 feet, 60 feet from the rears of the properties. So we've now doubled that, more than doubled that, back to 130 to 150 feet. So these the plant material in here, we're envisioning white pines, eastern red cedars, native evergreen trees, and grow up. And also, and we haven't gotten to that level yet with the drawings, but as we excavate for some of these pathways areas, we'll need to put soil somewhere. And so some of that soil could probably be artistically placed in berms along here. So then in addition to those evergreen trees, you'll have maybe 3 or 4 feet of fill. And then on top of that, some plant material. But we still have to we still have to determine the exact amount of cut from the pathway excavation. So we can't show that.
It looks like there's 3 walking access ways
Yes.
into the walking paths.
Mhm.
One of them on
Jester Lane, which is
Jester
a
Lane.
public substreet.
Any concern about cars parking there?
Probably not.
People walking in?
Probably not. The idea here is any folks that are accessing from the south, or that would actually be the west, Jester Lane. Folks in the neighborhood, they're gonna want to walk and not get in any cars. Same thing with folks from Handy Elementary classrooms. We want to have that connection through there. Same thing with Barlow Road.
Yeah, the same thing would apply to Barlow Road.
And this is envisioned as a neighborhood park. This is not something that a region would draw. It's not gonna have the amenities, it's not gonna have a playground, things like that that really draw and drive traffic. The art center, the traffic there will be minimal. We have, I guess it's like 2 dozen spaces of parking in this area. There was at one time, you see on the other concept plan, there's maybe a small drop-off area. We eliminated that to make it more of a, kind of a low-use type
You
facility.
could still park at the Jester Arts Space parking spots and then walk through to access the
Yes.
walkways.
Yes, there's a sidewalk connection here at the top of the parking lot to access that. And, we want to keep the pathway kind of robust around the edge, but not too close. It's kind of the happy medium. We want to have that nice 1 mile loop, because maybe we could put a couple little signs denoting that you've gone through a mile.
Do have a couple of questions that were entered into the Q&A. The first one was from Karen Rowland. She wants to know what kind of windows would be in the Jester house. Are they repaired or replacement ones?
They're replaced. We began peeling back the layers of the windows. There was substantial rot. No ability to salvage the frames themselves. So they're going to be replaced with ironclad doors and windows.
And from Michael Lasky, we have, are there going to be crosswalks or cross Grub Road from Brandon and Road Chase neighborhoods?
No, not at this time. That would entail mid-block crossing and, given the speeds on Grub Road, we would have to talk to DelDOT in the future about that. That would be this up in this area.
And I think we actually touched on this just a minute ago. Jim Parks is asking about parking for visitors. Will they have to park on Chalfont streets?
No, they won't. They can park at the Grub Road access here, which is up here, and park in here. And there will be there is already a turnaround. So you don't have to do any back and forth. You can go straight, turn around, and come back out.
From David Woods, what are the plans for the fencing parallel to Justin Lane behind those homes?
That will be the fence here. That fence will remain, except for at the end of Jester Lane, we'll take some of that fence down and put bollards.
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
What are the plans for the fencing parallel to Justin Lane behind those homes?
That's a very good question. What was the answer?
That the fencing will remain, except for the short piece of fencing at the end of Jester Lane to allow for pedestrian traffic to go through.
I know that the 8 or 9 houses on Justin Lane, of which I am one, is very much in favor of keeping some kind of a fence. Right now, it's a 6 foot or so chain link fence, just for security reasons, so people can't just walk directly into your backyard.
Yeah,
Now, the thing though about that fence is it's not maintained. I mean, it's okay with me to leave it like it is, but I don't think the county's willing to do that from a liability standpoint. Does that mean you're going to maintain it? Or do you know?
Well, I don't know. We'd have to look. We'd have to, ascertain the exact nature of what's, if it's falling over, or if it's not even our fence, if it's a neighbor's fence. We have to really take into account of what the fencing is. Yeah. If it's all.
We're on Justin Lane, I would say, I think I can speak for everyone. We're very much in favor of some kind of a fence there.
Okay.
And then, of course, you go down to Handy and the fence is perpendicular. that we don't care about, at least I don't care about, because it doesn't impact. Right.
Sure, we'll take a closer look at the
Yeah.
existing fences.
Pardon?
We'll take a closer look at the existing fences.
And I assume, I think is there fencing on the other side towards Grub Road?
Yeah, there is some fence back in this area, in the wooded area.
Right.
We won't remove that fence unless it's, falling down, we may have to prop it back up and repair it.
Yeah.
But the idea is not to open this up where we don't need to.
We have another question from Brenda Huffman. There's a significant drainage issue at the Hamby Elementary connection. How are they being addressed?
Sure. So here's the Hanby Elementary connection here. The new pathway is coming down this way. The Hanby property is on this side. You can see this concrete walkway is the existing concrete walkway that ties into an existing asphalt pathway. We're proposing to pipe some of the water collected here. There's some ditching, there's some grading here that conveys some water, and we want to match what's going on out there. Additionally, as to note, when you convert grassland and pasture to meadow, the runoff from that area will be less. So the meadow runoff here will probably be lessened. So a lot of those issues may dissipate through the change in the landscape cover over time. And again, this whole presentation and probably the construction plans, once they're ready, will be on the website. So if there are any other questions like that, we can certainly point you to the right place.
We do have a couple of hands raised. So I'm going to allow Matthew Friggin to talk. There you go.
Hi, this is Lindsay Padilla. Matthew Frim is my husband. We live on the house directly next to the Jester property. And previously in the meeting in January, we had discussed plans to move that pathway. And then looking at the new plan, it doesn't seem like there were any adjustments made. And I feel as though there was a lot of respect for the properties on Jester Lane, being, as you said, you had doubled the distance from the path. But I just feel like our property there has kind of been overlooked a little bit, and it's like directly on our fence line.
And the original talking was that there was a walkway or a driveway that was there, and that's why you guys were using that. Well, they ripped up the driveway when they did the Jester house, so now there is no existing infrastructure, so there's no reason that you need to put a walking path 10 feet from my property line when everybody else has one. You've respected their boundaries, and you said an average of 130 feet. Well, I have 10 feet.
So the idea there was always to have and utilize the old road. I believe the sub base for the old farmland is still there, so we're going to reutilize that. And to be specific, this is Mr. Fry's property here. There's your property corner. The Jester house is over in this direction, and the pathways here, and that's the old farm lane driveway access to the Jester house, and it's still there. It was just seeded over due to just its requirements for erosion and sediment control. But the subgrade is still there, so we plan to reutilize that and not have to tear up any area and encumber more cut than we can possibly dispose of elsewhere.
But you're talking about a 20 foot, or my property is 100 feet. So you're talking about 100 feet in a mile. So you're going to save that much money, and you're going to put people on my property line.
Well, the pathway was always going to be there.
I understand that, but we had talked, when there was concerns being raised at the meetings, we had spoken
To you
to
personally, I
you
believe.
about, could we move this off some? Could we move it to the other side of the driveway? Could we move it closer to the driveway, closer to the Jester house? And obviously nothing has been heard. And like, I understand that there was a driveway there, but like I said, 100 feet in the mile of pathway, does it need to be that close to my house?
Well, in this area right here, which on the other side of the pathway or the existing farm driveway is a swale. And we would, moving this pathway that way would put it right in the swale.
Why can't we move it to the other side of the driveway then?
Well, we want to keep some open space along the front of the house. As if the Jester house faces Grub Road.
Okay, so instead of putting it in front of one of your buildings, you're going to put it in front of mine, so I have no open space.
It's a public park and it's county land.
I just feel like there was a lot of respect for everyone else's properties minus ours. Ours is, like you said, 10 feet off, and everybody else's has been doubled into the hundreds, and it just doesn't seem right.
We did our best to take into account all the comments that we received, and we had to work with the site designer layout that was there. So staying out of the swales for stormwater purposes, to direct water. And honestly, cost comes into it too. And since that sub base is still there, that was the decision that was made.
All right.
I just feel like there was nothing was heard on my end. And it feels a little disrespectful, honestly. I understand there's a base there, but you're talking about $1 million project, and you guys are worried about $300 worth of gravel that's under that road. It just doesn't seem. Your plan was made, and you're not going to listen to what we have to say, I guess. So it's a little disrespectful.
I'm sorry. We took into account as many comments as we could to present the best plan that we could present.
Unfortunately, at times, when we did look at yours, it was just the site, the layout that made it more challenging to move there. We really did try and we did hear you, and we did look at that. I understand you're not happy where we landed, but we did hear you, and we did do our best overall to listen to the feedback we heard at the previous meeting.
But there is other options. Like, it could be moved to the other side of the driveway. Like, I watched them out there with a dozer. They put that swale in. So if you guys wanted it put in differently, they could have put the swale in a different spot. Like, they dug the swale. I watched Rebold out there. I was out there while they did it. Like, they dug that swale in there. Like, it could have been laid out differently, but my comments were ignored.
Well, and I'd be happy. I think we have your contact information. I'd be happy to go over the plan in more detail to you and answer your questions, more thoroughly, like after the meeting or in another time. But I do want to make sure everybody gets their questions in this evening. But we do have your contact information, and we will follow up with you.
Okay, I look forward to it. Thank you.
We also have Brenda Hoffman. Ask the question.
Hello, Brenda.
Hi, yes. Again, over my house backs up right at the Hanby Elementary piece of walkway where the drainage issue is so severe. And what I am wondering is if you could give some consideration to swinging that walkway, I guess, would it be north or would it be east? More towards Grub, so that instead of swinging down to the corner of the back of my property, come in a little higher so that it would be on the other side of the drainage ditch that is already there, and then tie in from further up.
Well, certainly, like the previous commenter, we can take a look at that and get back to you.
And Brenda, if I'm understanding you correctly, I think we put that there to connect to the existing walkway that's on the Hamby Elementary School property. And Marco showed in the detailed plans in the presentation that we're gonna be piping that should actually help improve some of the drainage area that's back there. I know exactly where you're talking about. It does get very wet, but hopefully we'll be able to direct some of that water off into the existing swale on Hamby's side.
Okay, well, if we could consider where that's going to tie in, so that instead of, if I'm seeing this right, it looks like it's coming down straight and tying in. I guess I'm just asking, could it veer more diagonally? So
Yeah.
that it,
We would have to look at this area, just like the previous commenter, we'd have to look at what's going on out there. We
I mean,
can't
okay,
make it on the fly like that.
okay, in addition, oh, I'm sorry. In addition to the drainage issues that are back there, there's also a dumping issue right there in that corner. That seems to be the place that people take their leaves in the fall. It seems to be the place that the school dumps branches. And so that whole corner right there is really pretty much of an eyesore at times. And just somehow addressing that whole angle back there, I think might help.
We can definitely take a look at that. And if there is dumping going on, I'll make sure that you have our contact information so that we can address that on the park property.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we have George Fricker.
Hello?
Hey, thank you. I see that both paths dead end on the Grub Road. So if you would go back to that, please, thank you. So the paths dead end on the Grub Road, there's no sidewalk. There's absolutely nowhere to walk on Grub Road. I don't understand why the path would just dump and dead end on the Grub Road. There's nothing there other than, well, there's nothing there. Like, it just doesn't make sense why you're dead ending a path onto a very busy highway with no sidewalks. I mean, you can't ride your bike on Grub Road because people fly up and down there like crazy. You can't walk on Grub Road. There's no crosswalks to go to the next neighborhoods, as you said. So why does the path dead end onto Grub Road?
So part of that is as we said, we do have to get agency approval. DOT standards for pathway, when it ties back into the road, where there is no other pathway to tie into on the adjoining property, is to bring it in on an angle like this. And then over here, we don't have that kind of room. We're just going to use the old apron for that farmland on this side. And the idea there is, from what I recall at DOT, is that if you do have the occasional on-road cyclist that wants to enter into the park, that they will enter in this way.
You can't, it's impossible. You can't, nobody rides a bike on Grub Road. It's a dangerous, people drive 50 miles an hour on a 2-lane road. So you're gonna have people trying to park there and get on the path. It just, to me, that doesn't make sense. It's a nice walking path. And then my second question is still in relation to go back to that 2816, which is my son's house. Is there going to be a fence that separates the pathway from the house?
I believe he has a fence along the side of his property. There is an existing privet hedge that goes along here. And there's some other existing landscaping. And we don't plan to do anything with that at this time. During construction, we'll preserve that. And maybe we can add some other things there on the landscape plan that creates some more buffer if we can't move the pathway.
I got to tell you, I'm very disappointed in that particular area. There's no reason to run that path that close to that house. You've accommodated every other property owner, and you haven't even listened to us. So I got to tell you, I'm very disappointed, and it is just not it's not fair. it's just not a fair situation. You've bent over backwards, and justifiably so, to help the people back in the back. But you wrote all the notes down, and you still have that path going right by that property. So I can't understand why that path dead ends on Grub Road, and I can't understand why you're doing running that path that close to a personal property. But this is the county. You're going to do what you're going to do. So I've said my piece.
That seems to be all we have for hands raised. We do have one question about drainage. From David Woods regarding drainage. There's a significant runoff from the perpendicular fence through the homes onto Justin Lane. Has this drainage issue been considered?
We'd have to take a look at that and get a specific address where that would be.
Can we follow up with Mr. Woods
Yeah.
specifically? Okay, we will do that to make sure we answer accurately. Oops, any other hands raised? Is there, it looks like we're not receiving any more questions. All of this again will be on our website. Also, I believe there is an email where people have further questions. They could email us or call you. Maybe, okay, does everyone? Marco.voice@newcastlede.org. .gov, sorry. Yeah, we'll put that in the chat for you so that if you, as you look at the plans or you think about something later that you want to ask us, please, we'll leave Marco's name and email address in the chat so you can reach out to him directly. And we also have 3 other individuals we will follow up with this week to answer your questions more specifically. Anything else? Right. Okay. Well, thank you. I really appreciate all of your time this evening. Thank you all.